This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
For
the first time in this decade, more people are moving out of New Hampshire than into it. But will that be good for liberty or bad for liberty? The man who will probably be able to best provide the answer, if he has time, is Jason Sorens, the founder of the Free State Project and an ace statistician. Or at least a guy who's very good at reading demographic information. But while we're waiting for him to speak from on high, I will just poke around on some of the statistics that I've seen and try and give my own take on them and their impact on liberty. The obvious implication would be if there's fewer people moving into the state, then that would mean those of us who are moving into the state for liberty purposes would have more of an impact within that immigrant group. However, I think the conventional wisdom might be wrong here, and actually this drop in immigration might be bad for liberty in New Hampshire. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll throw some statistics at you first. According to the Associated Press, the state did gain about 4,000 people last year, but it was because of immigrants and births outweighing deaths. And by immigrants, I mean foreign immigrants. They say the state gained 4,000 people, 2,000 foreign immigrants helped boost the population, but significantly, 2,400 more residents left New Hampshire for another state than settled in New Hampshire from another state in the year ending July 1st. Now that all kind of relates to this long-standing myth that New Hampshire is losing its liberty because of immigrants. That's something you'll hear from people all over the state, and they blame not immigrants in general, but Massachusetts immigrants. And there, of course, was some very good, or at least some very interesting demographic research done by the union leader, maybe around 2006, which I believe is part of, well, if you take that in context with some other information that the Free Staters have compiled, that's probably a myth, and in fact the Massachusetts residents who were fleeing here were really an asset, and it's not necessarily a good thing that we're getting less immigration. The union leader article and research from back around 2006 indicated that most Massachusetts escapees were Republicans as of that time. And while a Republican in the traditional sense, in the recent sense of the last few years, is not necessarily going to be a pro-liberty person, having people who are voting Republican at the state level in the state races certainly is a pro-liberty outcome for New Hampshire. And so I think that immigration was really helpful more than harmful. My theory is that the liberties we've been losing in New Hampshire are being lost because of the public school systems. But anyway, I have more evidence for that, and that is the fact that if you look at Jason Sorens', I think it was his 2004 ideological map of New Hampshire, where he divided the state into, he showed you like the voting patterns of each district in New Hampshire in terms of state reps. You saw some of the most pro-liberty voting records were in the south of New Hampshire, not in the north. Obviously, the city centers were the most authoritarian, but a lot of pro-liberty voting records along the southern tier of New Hampshire, which again, that tends to be where more of the Massachusetts residents end up. So again, I don't think immigration was a bad thing for liberty. I will admit from my petitioning experience that overseas immigrants tended not to be, I don't know if they were personally pro-liberty or not, but it was very difficult to involve them in any kind of activist sort of thing, like a petition, like getting them to sign a petition or something like that, because they weren't citizens, and they didn't speak the language well enough to understand maybe a complex petition issue. But that probably cuts both ways, and a person with a leftist agenda with a petition in their hand would have just as much trouble with an immigrant as I ever would with a more conservative or libertarian petition. Another interesting statistic that came out yesterday, August 4th, was that home sales have plummeted in New Hampshire, and prices are down 8% from 1 year ago. The median sale price in New Hampshire for a home is roughly $240,000. Home sales overall are down 22% for the first 6 months of this year compared to the first 6 months of 2007. That's a big drop. But again, there are implications, liberty implications, and the one that I see, of course, is that there are a lot of freedom lovers around the country who've been wanting to buy property in New Hampshire, and there's some New Hampshire residents who are, renting, who are, free staters who want to buy property, and this is making it easier and easier to do so. My theory, at least over the last year, has been that what we will see happening as a result of the various economic crises that are hitting is that we actually get more immigration, more free stater immigration to New Hampshire, but we will have a challenge in the fact that many of the people getting here will be jobless, and they'll be coming here simply because they lost their job in some other part of the state or some other part of the country. So, that is still my expectation, because the jobs crisis hasn't really hit yet. It'll be one of the last ones to hit, assuming it does. But my expectation for the 2010 era would be that we will be awash in free staters, but they will be poor. Anyway, these are just some of my thoughts on the demographic trends that are going on around New Hampshire and how they impact liberty and specifically the free stater migration. This is Dave Ridley signing off this August 5th, 2008 for RidleyReport.com.
By the way, this edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by Secede, C-A-I. They're a company that does collection the whole new way. They know that not only do you want your money back, you want to keep your customers. Secede, C-A-I. They collect with respect.